Over the next few videos, we're going to be working on the functionality of this location detail screen. We're going to show the grid of users checked in. We're going to allow the user to check in, check out, update the UI, all that stuff. And of course, we're going to go through the process, right? First, we're going to get things working. Then we're going to come back and refactor, right? Back to that layers and layers and layers analogy. And the reason I keep harping on this and I keep talking about it is because I know a lot of you out there probably haven't built your own app. Maybe you've only done courses or tutorials. Well, when you're building your own app and your own idea, your own feature, whatever it is, you're not going to write perfectly refactored, clean code your first time through while you're trying to figure out and get it working. And again, I really want to drive that point home that that's how development, really is. So that's why we don't just write the perfectly final refactored code from the start. I'm trying to, recreate that process. So, okay, the goal of this video is to allow the user to check in and check out, but we're not going to have time to do the UI and all that stuff. So by the end of this video, I want to be able to press the button and then go up to the CloudKit dashboard and see that I am checked in. And once I have that functionality working, then we'll come back and do the UI and all that stuff in future videos. Okay, let's go. So here we are in our location detail view, right? Remember this button, the location action button of the person fill checkmark. Here's the design. It's that button right there. What we want to do when they press that button, we want to have a function that updates their check-in status because they can use the same button to check in or check out. So we need a function that does that. And we're going to go to our location detail view model here. We're going to write that here. Let's call it func update check in status. And then we need to pass in hey, are we checking in or are we checking out? So in order to track that, let's create an enum up here, very similar to what we did on the profile screen where we had our profile context. So we'll do enum check in status, and that will be case of check in and checked out. And of course, I don't know why I type it on 2 lines just to show you. I don't know, but I'm putting that on 1 line. So again, just to reiterate, if an enum is super small and clean, I like to just put it up 1 line above my class. If it gets longer and a little messier, maybe I'll move it to another file or somewhere else. Again, personal stylized preference. Okay, back down to our update check-in status. The reason I created that enum is because we want to pass that in. So we'll say to check in status. It's our argument name, and that is of type check in status. So you'll see we'll pass in .checked in, .checked out, right? So update check in status to .checked in, .checked out. That's how it's going to read. So we wrote it like that. Okay, so this is the setup for the function we're going to write. Okay, so the big picture process here, we'll do the comment step by step. I think that helps illustrate it. So the first thing we need to do to update the check-in status on a profile, we need the profile, right? So we need to retrieve the DDG profile. Cool. Once we have that profile, and I know my comments are gray, sorry, I think that's still readable. Let me know in the comments if that's unreadable. I'll switch them to green. This is just how I normally program. Just quick note on that. I like to have my comments gray like that is because by default, they're that bright green color. And I feel like that stands out too much. I like my comments to kind of, not be prominent, kind of fade into the background a little bit. That's my personal style. That's why I do it like this. But again, if it's unreadable, let me know and I'll change it in future videos. So once we have retrieved our profile, we need to create a reference to the location and update our profile to that. Okay, cool. And then we need to save the updated profile to CloudKit. Or I guess the CloudKit dashboard, whatever. So, okay, those are the 3 steps we got to do. Get the profile, update the profile with a reference, and then save that profile to CloudKit. Okay, so step 1 is retrieving the profile. I'll even start doing it like this here in between the comments. Now, we already have, if I go to utilities, managers, CloudKit manager, we have our fetch record, right? This is how we do this. Fetch record, we just need a record ID, and that'll give us the profile record. Cool, so we already have the CloudKit function here. Remember I said we're gonna reuse this a lot. So back to location detail view model, we can do CloudKit manager .shared .fetch record. Okay, record ID. We don't have that. We gotta fix that. What are we gonna do about that? So I need my profile record ID. Well, if you remember on launch in our go to managers, CloudKit manager, right, we have our user record, and our user record will have a reference to a profile record, and I can get the ID that way if it has it, right? Because you got to remember, big picture, our app does not require a user to create a profile, right? We did that intentionally for the user experience. So we may not have that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable on our CloudKit manager called var profile record ID, and that is of type CK record.id, right? And it's optional because again, You don't have to create a profile in our app, so that's why it's optional. However, this get user record, remember we're calling this on launch, just to refresh your memory. Let me go back to www.app. Nope, that's not it. It's in the app tab view. App tab view, in on appear, CloudKit Manager, get user record. Remember, we call that in the background just to get that, so we don't have to constantly get our user record via a network call. So back to CloudKit Manager, this is what gets called on launch. So what we can do, if a profile exists, we can grab it off of our user record. So let's do that real quick. And then we'll address the situation where they just haven't created their profile yet. And once they create it, we got to handle that, but let's do one at a time. So here, what we can do is if let profile reference, right? Because we're getting the reference to the profile equals user record. And then remember, we named this property on our user record up in CloudKit. We named it user profile. That's just the name of the property we added to our user object. And it's going to be as a CK record.reference. That's what we're casting it to if it exists. And basically, this is unwrapping and optional. Hope you're familiar with if let by now. So if we do have something at the key user profile, that is where we will do profile record ID equals profile reference dot record ID. Because remember, when we create a reference, that's how they reference each other, the record ID. Oh, we got to do self dot. Okay, so to recap real quick, basically on launch, we're getting our user record, and then we're also checking, hey, does that user record we got have a reference to a user profile? Cool. If it does, set our profile record ID to that reference record ID. Good. And then if it doesn't have anything, this is going to remain nil because again, we don't have to have a profile. Okay, so that's the case of us checking for this on launch, right? They have an existing profile, we're going to handle it. If they don't, we handle it. The only case we haven't handled is, okay, what happens on first launch, or maybe the user decides to create their profile for the first time, whether that's on first launch or 20 launches later. Well, upon profile creation, we definitely want to set this profile record ID as well. And real quick, this is a great time to point out the slippery slope of a singleton. So, right, our CloudKit Manager is a singleton. Well, we're updating our profile record ID from here. And as you're about to see, we're going to update it from our profile view for when we create a profile. Now, in our small app, we're updating this from 2 areas. That's pretty easy to manage. It's only 2 situations. So in my opinion, singleton is perfectly fine for this smaller app. But you can see the slippery slope, right? As this app grows or as you start to be in a larger app, what happens is you never go with the singleton when you're already updating it from 20 places. You won't go with that decision. But how these come back to bite you is what happens is it's okay, cool. We only have 2. We can use the singleton. Great. And then 2 months later, you add a new feature. Let's add one more thing to the singleton. It's only 3, no big deal. 2 months later, it's 4th. Okay, it's no big deal. You see how that happens, right? Over time, you slowly start adding stuff, and then it comes back to bite you. So again, I just want to point that out. Singletons are fine if you use them correctly, but beware of the slippery slope of just slowly adding things over a long period of time. Okay, so that's my warning. Now, the second place we're going to update our singleton is in the profile view here, right? When we create our profile. So I'm going to go to the profile view model. Here in create profile, down here in the success case, right, where we pull out our profile record type and then we set our existing profile to that. Remember that existing profile is unique just to this profile view. So here we'll do CloudKit manager.shared.profile record ID equals record.record ID, right? Because it's only going into this conditional. Remember, when the record type is of profile, and then we have the record ID there. So again, on launch, we handle 99% of the cases, right? If they have an existing profile or if they don't, we handle that accordingly. The one case we had to account for is when they create that profile for the very first time, we want to make sure we update that, which we handled here. Okay, so back to our CloudKit Manager, we have our profile record ID now being updated. Whenever we use this now, we definitely want to check to make sure if it's nil or not, because again, the profile is optional. So let's go back to that location detail here. So with record ID, let's check for that first. So this is it's kind of a redundant check if I'm honest, but I'm doing it just in case, because what we're going to do in a later video is this update check-in status is only going to fire off when you tap the check-in button. However, in a later video, we're going to check to see if they even have a profile. And if they don't have a profile, we're going to actually hide the check-in button, right? So if there's no profile, update check-in status will never fire off. So this check I'm about to do is redundant, but again, you never know. So I'm going to check for it anyway. So guardlet profile record ID equals CloudKit manager.shared.profile record ID, and then else, and we will return, and maybe we'll will show an alert at a later date. But for now, we're just going to return there. So now that I've checked to make sure we have our profile record ID, it's not nil. Let's go ahead and use it here. Profile record ID, and then the completion handler. Scroll up a little bit. Again, result, and then I will switch off that result, and then do a Command B to let Xcode yell at me because I am super lazy. There we go. Switch must be exhaustive. I know that. Give me my cases. Okay, cool. So now we just have to handle the success and failure case after we fetch the record. So we're going to need the record. So in the success case, let record. So we have access to it. So here's what we need to do here. If we successfully retrieve the record, right, we need to, well, actually I can pull up my comment from down here, keep it consistent. Create a reference to the location. But we also have to handle, right, we're passing in up here a check-in status. We can either be updating to checked in or checked out. So we need to handle both of those situations. So to do that, we are going to switch off of check-in status, right? And then I'll do a Command B again, so Xcode yells at me. So you can see I have checked in or checked out. So when we're in the checked in scenario, that's when we want to do record. We're updating the record we got back, and then DDG profile. This is the key, remember. We want to do is checked in. Remember we did these constant keys that we've been using. And so we're going to basically create the reference here. So yep, this always happens to me. Forgot to do import cloud kit. Cool. In Xcode 13, it actually does that for you. So that's going to be nice. We're not there yet. Beta just came out. Okay, so we're going to do a CK record.reference, initialize that with a record ID. The record ID we want is location.id, right? That's our location's record ID, and the action we want is .none. That's the delete action. We don't want to delete our profile if we delete the reference. Okay, and I believe I need self here. Yeah, we're gonna explicitly or implicitly capture self up here. We're gonna talk about the weak self stuff in the optimization videos. We'll come back to that. But if you capture self implicitly up here, you don't have to type self everywhere down here. That's what that does. Okay, so in the check-in state, right, where we want to update our status to checked in, we are creating the reference. That's what we're doing here. The reference is to our location.id, which if we go back just to refresh your memory into our model, DDG location, right, our ID is our record ID. There you go. So that's what we're connecting this with. Go back. Cool. So in the checked out case, all we want to do is just set this to nil. So what I'm going to do is copy this, paste it down there, and then equals nil. So we're essentially just removing the reference, and that is us checking out of a location. Okay, cool. So we've done step 2, right? We've created a reference to a location, and we've updated our record, and we've handled, hey, when we're checking in, there we go. When we're checking out, we're good. So now the third step is to save the updated profile to CloudKit. So we still want to do this into the success case here, right here. Now you're going to notice, right? We have this function here, we have nested switch statements. We're going to have nested network calls. We're going to come back and talk about the refactor on this in a later video. Again, process, get it working, then come back and refactor. Just to reiterate, the reason I like it, and I think most people do it this way, is because once you get it working, you know everything's working, right? You know if something broke, that's where it is. And when you try to refactor, if something breaks, you know it's in your refactor. If you try to refactor while you're trying to get it working, that can be a mess to debug because you don't know if you messed up your refactor, or you don't know if you messed up your logic. Okay, so the save, again, back to CloudKit Manager, we already have this, right? On the convenience initializer, or not, on the convenience API, not convenience initializer. Okay, so there you go, right? There's our save. Again, I told you we were gonna reuse those a lot. Back to the view model here, CloudKit Manager.shared.save, and I gotta pass in a record. Well, we're just gonna pass in this record that we've been updating here. So record, and then hit result. Same old, right? We're going to switch off the result. I'm going to do a Command B to Xcode yell at me. Cool. Yeah, give me that. Okay. And in success case, this is where in a future video, we would basically update our checked in profiles array, right? To update our grid, right? We successfully checked in or checked out. We want to update our grid below. So that's where we do that. But for now, because again, we're just trying to test the logic, we'll just do a simple print statement. And by the way, I like to do this for my debugging. I don't know. I think it's a little extra step, but I just like the look of it. Checked in/out successfully. And then I will fancy, maybe, right? Print. And I'll just do like the red X. I just like to put emojis in my print statements. And I know it's a little bit extra, but especially when you're like sometimes you're really debugging logic and you have, 10 print statements all throughout. You're doing some print statement debugging. These emojis are like very helpful. Put a little skull up there for a bug and a green check for something good. I think it really helps out. Error. I'll just put error there. Error saving record. And then here, let's, in this failure, just do the same thing. We'll make it different so we know which one it is. This is actually the failure for the fetching. So error fetching record. It shouldn't happen, but just in case that pops up, clean up those spaces down there. Okay, so let's recap real quick because do a Command B to make sure there's no errors before I recap. I think we're good. Yeah, so again, a little bit messy of a function, but like I said, it's a process. We're getting it working. So update check-in status. We're passing in either checked in, checked out. In fact, before I forget, let's actually do that. So on the button tab here for our, person fill check mark, this is our check-in button. We want to do view model dot update check-in status to. For now, we're going to hard code it because we haven't implemented the logic yet to change this. We'll do that in a future video. So we're just going to hard code this for our initial testing, right? So you see how this reads. View model, update check-in status to checked in. Okay, back to the view model. Yep, here we are, update check-in status to. We passed that check-in status. Again, this is redundant, but we want to make sure we have a profile record ID. It's redundant because we're not even going to fire off this function unless we have a profile, but just to be safe. And then here we're fetching the profile. And then once we get the record, if we're in the checked in status, we're going to create our reference to that location. Cool, we're good. If we're checking out, we're just going to make our is checked in nil. Then that means we don't have a reference to anything. So we're checked out. And then once we've updated that record, we're going to call our convenience API to save the record. And then upon successful save of the record, we're going to update our checked in profiles array, which is going to update all the faces at the bottom. And real quick, because some of you may be wondering like, oh, we're going to fetch the profile every time they check in. And this was a trade-off I decided to go with. And it's fine to disagree. Let's have the discussion down there. But this is part of the programming decisions you have to make because sometimes there's not a perfect solution and you have to take the lesser of two evils, right? So my choice is here, right? Because one option would be, once I download the DDG profile once, why don't I store it somewhere locally, whether that's inner singleton, user defaults, whatever you want to do, like that way I have it. Well, yes, you'll have it, but now you have to manage like updating that saved profile every time the profile updates. What if they update it from a different device if you're supporting all that stuff? So saving it locally opens yourself up to a world of errors. However, downloading it from the network isn't great either because you don't want to be making those network calls all the time. So again, these programming decisions are all about like understanding the trade-offs and making the best decision, knowing that there may not be a perfect solution. So again, because I didn't want to open myself up to the world of like managing that saved profile from all the various updates, I said, you know what? It's small data, right? Our DDG profile is like 3 lines of text and a very, very small avatar image, right? If we were downloading an entire feed of images, of course, that changes the calculation of the decision. But because the data's small, I am fine, downloading it every time. But I wanted to bring that up because, there are many different ways to do things. And that's why it's the art of programming. It's how do you judge the trade-offs and how do you make your decisions? So again, something to think about. And as always, I'm happy to discuss in the comments if you feel differently. Okay, now for the moment of truth. Let's test this. Run it. Okay, here we are. And by the way, I had to do that sign-in thing. I have to do it like every day. I'm sure you're running into that as well. But I'm editing it out. I don't want you to think that like I'm not seeing it and you are. I see it all the time. I just edit it out because you don't want to watch me type in my password that many times. Okay, so we need to go to locations. Let's go to Grace Deli and Cafe. Oh, this is our dummy data. I was confused. I was like, I haven't checked in yet. We haven't updated that. So, okay, so I'm going to hit the check-in button and nothing happened. Okay, let's see what's going on. Let's see if we're even getting into this one and getting into that one. All right, let's see if we're there too. Run it. Little debugging bonus lesson here. I hate when my bottom console gets that big right there. Okay, cool. Locations, Grace Deli, check in. Okay, come on, get small. Okay, so we made it there. Next. Okay, we made it here into the success. I believe the success. I guess I should double check to make sure we're in the success case because we're only calling this final thing if we have a success. But it would have printed that error as well, but I didn't get any print statements. What is going on? Okay, we're in the success, cool. And see if we go into success or failure. They both have print statements, so I don't know why nothing printed. Okay, looks like we're in the success. Yep, there we are. We should be printing that out. And it printed out that time. What is going on, Mr. Breakpoints? Okay, stop. Get rid of all these breakpoints. Was Xcode just being weird? Let's try running that again. I don't know why I didn't get any printouts that time. Location, Grace's Deli and Cafe. Oh, we still have breakpoints. Run it. Checked in, out successfully. Let's tap it again. Checked in, out successfully. Okay, I don't know what happened that first time. I'm gonna run it a third time just to be sure. Okay, the locations, let's try Chipotle. Check in, checked in, out successfully. Checked in, okay. No idea what happened that first time, but it's working now. Who knows? Okay, so stop it there. Well, I checked out. Let me check in the third time. Okay, I should have 3 printouts. Yeah, 3 printouts there. Now let's stop it because we want to double check up on CloudKit dashboard. What I want to do here, by the way, the newly redesigned CloudKit dashboard, make sure you're in the right container. Public database, we want DDG profile. So I will query records on my profiles. Here is my profile. I hope this works, my company. If I scroll over to is checked in, here you go. You see a record ID. So that means we have a reference to it. And if I click on it, we can see like what record that is. And you see we checked into Chipotle, right? It's Chipotle, enough said, name Chipotle. So you can see I do have a reference to Chipotle. Let's go back to Xcode and try a checkout real quick. Run it again. I guess I could have kept it running. Oh well. Locations, Chipotle. Now my name's not showing up because we haven't done that yet. Okay, checked in, out successfully. So I should be checked out now. And again, we're gonna come back, update the UI, all that stuff. But if I go to CloudKit dashboard, okay, hit query records. Okay, I'm still checked in. Sometimes the database takes a little bit to like update, make sure I'm in the right thing, public database. Okay, why am I still checked in? Query records, still checked in. Okay, so let's go to our code. Let's see if I mess something up here. Record DG profile is checked in equals nil. That should be right. Oh, I know what I'm doing. Ha 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 ha. I'm glad I'm catching this on tape because these are the problems that you do. Okay, so we'll go to location detail. What I'm doing here is we haven't implemented that flip. That's where I got confused because I've already built this app like 3 times. Remember, we're hard coding .checked in. So in order for us to check out, we need to change this to checked out. Again, we're going to implement the logic to flip this automatically, but the hard coding of the testing backfired and blew up in my face. But hey, this is what happens in development. So now we hard code the checked out just to test the checked out feature, and now I should be able to check out. I'm at Chipotle, right? Click that, I get the printout, checked in, out successfully, cool. Now if I go back to the CloudKit dashboard, hit query records, is checked in, should be blank, there you go. My reference is gone, so I'm no longer checked in somewhere. So that's the first phase of getting this functionality working. Again, like I said at the beginning, we just wanted to hard code it and test. Let's get this showing up in CloudKit. Once we get it showing up, now we can move on. We know this is good. We can move on to the next steps, which is, getting all of our users showing up. And then once we check in, we need to update that array of profiles. So our grid at the bottom updates. So let's keep it moving and get to it.